Genshin is the worst WuWa on top. Genshin better than the Kuro dogs. Hoyo versions could never. Kuro coin to the top. Augusta slaughters my week of WuWa HP inflation. LOL 25%. Shit game just a copy could never beat the original. Look at this prostitute. No, look at this prostitute. No, look at my shiny gambling addiction. No, look at mine. WuWa CC bad. Steam Bundex good. Did I get your guys' attention? Okay, great. Recently, a huge YouTuber named Nicholas Light has entered the Gacha gauntlet, and has at the time of writing this played Genshin, WuWa, ZZZ, and is just now giving HSR a shot. He's played through all of WuWa, stopped playing ZZZ due to annoying fans on both sides of the children's playground that they like to call their battlefield, and then quit Genshin after like an hour or two. But hey, he's enjoying HSR, I think. But a big point of conversation was how he went from this to this. So yeah, as expected, a lot of Genshin fans are upset and WuWa fans are rejoicing while the minority of Kurobots are gloating. They got recognition from by most definitions, a normie. Which I thought people hated, but you know, if it means glazing the thing that they like, then yippee, I guess. But that's not really what I want to talk about. I want to talk about this specific clip.
Wuthering Waves to me is me in my best shape, right? I wake up in the morning, I could get the day going. I could get my day started. I could grind hard. I could work out. I could have a great day and everything. Muscles, I'm ripped. I'm eating right. I don't feel sluggish. I'm energized. I don't feel tired all day. Genshin Impact to me is the opposite. It's out of shape in Nicholas Light. It's walking up 3 steps and I'm out of breath in Nicholas Light. Slow and sluggish and I don't want to wake up and I'm just feeling tired all day. That's what Genshin Impact felt for me.
I think this line right here perfectly encapsulates the biggest reason why people are starting to gravitate towards Wuthering Waves more than Genshin. And no, this isn't a video to dog on Genshin. Trust me, I have more than enough disdain for the game to do that, but I'm looking at this through the lens of someone who likes video games. And as someone who's played a bunch of different video games throughout my life, I like to think I know a little something something. So we're going to talk about why I think new players like Nicholas are gravitating towards WuWa as opposed to Genshin, and why those first 30 minutes are so important. Yep, we're going to start with some psychology. Here, I'll put this up for the more attention deficit viewers. We're going to talk about 2 things: first impression and tolerance. TLDR, studies show that you have about 1/10 of a second to make a first impression. So about the same amount of time to zero out your bank account when you're buying pulls. Alongside that, just because of how our brains are wired, it can be really hard to shake judgments based off of first impressions due to, well, human nature and our tendency to look for confirmatory evidence. Plus, there's this thing known as the anchoring effect, which is basically our tendency to judge something heavily based off of the first piece of information we get. I'm sure we've all been in that situation where no matter how different a person may be, that one weird thing that stood out during the first encounter will always linger in your head. It's why Genshin and WuWa, and honestly a lot of games, start out with a big cutscene to hook you in and keep your attention. Like how I sound like a moron in the beginning, but probably riled up both fandoms. See how I brought it back around? I did the good. We could go more into depth, but I want you to focus on the actual gameplay over anything else, because within the first play session, you're going to be interacting with the gameplay more than the story. And before the children go into the comments and type, "LOL, it's because he knows Genshin is better," shut the fuck up, you sound dumb, we'll talk about that later. It's a video game. Gameplay is the essence of a video game. If the gameplay sucks, no one wants to play the game. It's that simple. And all things considered, Genshin has a lot to offer. An interesting combat mechanic in the elemental reactions, a bunch of unique characters, and a huge open world environment to run around in and explore. Yet, you're only interacting with one of these elements right out the get-go, the open world. This is an open world game, and man, Genshin kind of fails as an open world game. I'm not saying this in a haha Genshin sucks kind of way. I'm saying this because there is a severe design flaw with Genshin that they overlooked when copying the notes of Breath of the Wild. Something we need to understand about open world games is that they need to fulfill these requirements to be successful. An interesting world to explore, and an actual fun way to traverse the world. Genshin does have a pretty interesting world, despite being a little offbeat at times with the themes. It's still a nice world. The problem is, movement sucks. Yeah, I know.
Oh, here it goes again with the stamina and climbing walls.
Well, yes, this is where I go, but you need to understand the movement is important because it's an open world game. The time it takes from point A to point B in Genshin without fast travel is not only slow, but unsatisfying. The most you have for traversal for all characters, not specific characters, that's a whole issue on its own, but let's stay on topic, is, well, running for a short amount of time and climbing for a short amount of time. Even with maxed out stamina, it feels slow and sluggish. And gliding, which, by the way, in my opinion, sucks in every game that isn't Breath of the Wild or Batman. This shit is so cringe and lame, and I need it out of my games, please. Just my opinion though. When you think about games like Spider-Man or Miles Morales or Spider-Man 2, the thing everyone loves are the beautiful open world that's complemented by its incredible traversal system. You can swing around, launch yourself, vault over and parkour, do tricks, do flips, and even in some other games, it's incorporated into the combat and allows you to bounce off of enemies. And if Spider-Man is too specific, then look at games like Prototype, Infamous Second Son, Assassin's Creed, GTA, The Witcher. The options are literally endless. And newsflash, almost every game I mentioned predates Genshin, but you need to have that balance, or else you would end up with a game like Forspoken that allows cool movement, but a bland world to explore. I don't know about you, but if I don't even feel good moving around, I'm over the game in about 10 minutes. Even Breath of the Wild allows you to ride around on a horse. And remember why I said that gliding sucks in games that aren't in Batman and Breath of the Wild? It's more than just that. Aside from horses, Breath of the Wild has almost the exact same movement. Except, contextually, it makes sense. Besides all the fantasy and magic in the Legend of Zelda world, Link himself is a pretty grounded character. He almost has zero magical abilities inherently, so him running around and gliding and climbing walls makes sense. But when you look at Genshin, you see motherfuckers summoning meteors, ripping space-time, and be fucking Blastoise. But then you got a pick flower number 439 at the top of a cliff face, and this is what you're looking at. Remember that whole meme of, it makes you feel like Spider-Man? Well, as overplayed as it was, that should be the goal of the game. When I'm playing Spider-Man, I want to feel like Spider-Man. When I'm playing God of War, I want to feel like Kratos. But when I'm playing Genshin, I don't feel anything with the characters I'm playing. There's a serious disconnect because there's almost zero relation to how a character feels to play compared to how they're described in any other form. They feel like shitty action figures from the 99-cent store that promises you that they're official merchandise. It's immersion breaking, it's stupid looking, and worst of all, it's boring. The moment your game bores a player, you've lost them. They're gonna hop off. Bore them enough times, you'll never see that player again. And arguably, movement is more important than the combat itself. Genshin could have the most insane combat of all time, it doesn't. But if it takes me 7 business days and 4 Red Bulls to get from one fight to another, you've lost me. You could even make this comparison to real life. Imagine if you could only travel through New York City by walking or car and there were no trains or buses. Suddenly, going to that fire-ass pizza spot in Little Italy doesn't sound so peachy keen. WuWa makes small changes and additions to the movement, but suddenly it completely transforms the experience. You can run infinitely as long as you're not in combat. You can parkour, you can run on walls, you don't have to rotate around an overhang and can flip over it. You can grapple, and all this makes traversal so much more seamless and fun. I mean, there were parkour videos coming out during WuWa's release, and we saw the same thing when Flight was introduced, with people showing off their flight abilities. When you make an action open world game, there's almost just as much importance on how you play the game outside of combat as there is during combat. And yes, I maintain that gliding is still boring and lame and stupid in WuWa as well, but again, that's just my opinion. It just don't got the same flavor as Batman gliding in and drop kicking bitches. Even in combat, WuWa allows more options in comparison to Genshin. like grappling, countering, intro and outro skills. But I want to focus on the dodge mechanic, because it is something that is both the games share. Sort of. So Genshin does have a dodge button. You can press it and you dash in a direction of your choosing, and you do get some iframes, which is nice, but it's not really a dodge. It can be used to dodge, but you are rarely negating all damage with it unless you're like giga sweaty, and it's more used to like relocate. Not bad, but it does make you feel less in control of what you want your character to do and can feel unsatisfying. WuWa counters this issue by adding a perfect dodge mechanic. You can preemptively dodge like in Genshin, but dodge at the perfect time and you're rewarded with a cool animation, complete negation of damage, and a cool little slow motion effect. Yet, you're pressing the same button. This mechanic bridges the gap between what you're imagining your character to do in the game and what is actually happening, creating this illusion of more options when, again, you're just pressing the same button, and thus makes you feel more in control of your character. These small additions allow for more fluid gameplay, which is Genshin's biggest weakness when you're talking about a comparison between the two, and why more new players are gravitating towards WuWa. Does that make Genshin's gameplay awful? No, it's still a fully playable game. But when Nicholas says he feels at 100% when playing WuWa as opposed to Genshin, can you blame him? Going from WuWa to Genshin is literally driving a 2025 Honda Civic and then driving a 2006 Honda Accord. Yeah, they're both cars, but you're gonna be missing all those neat little features in the 2025 model. And these mechanics are stuff you're interacting with throughout the entire game. So when your first impressions of Genshin is sluggish and outdated, can you really blame someone for not wanting to continue? Especially after they made the mistake of trying WuWa first? Yes, I do think playing WuWa was an inevitable mistake on Nicholas's part, but can't really blame him for that. But Genshin's story is more in-depth and way better. I have zero experience on the Genshin story. I literally stopped playing during Klee's release. But you guys have to understand, if you don't have the gamer hooked within the first 30 minutes, who cares about the story? If it's a slog to even get to NPC 1 in 327 to interact with the story, who gives a flying fuck? The only games that primarily focus on story are visual novels. Every other case, the story is simply a bonus. Bro, games used to put the story in the pamphlet in the game case. Does that mean story isn't important? No, but I'd rather play a game that has the most abysmal story but phenomenal gameplay over playing a shit game with a good story. If I wanted to do that, I'd read a book. Well, then they're just impatient and can't deal with slow burn. Okay, so let's talk about tolerance. Remember when I said there's two things? Tolerance, as you can see, is the ability or willingness to tolerate something. In particular, to the existence of opinions or behavior that one does not necessarily agree with. You have to understand that Genshin came out during COVID, a period of time that took a huge toll on people, especially our generation. Social interaction was at an all-time low. Everyone was stuck at home, and that led to an upsurge in online presence and activity. Soon, that backlog of anime finished. All those movies they wanted to watch, done and rated. All those games that never had time to complete, 100%ed. During a time where all these forms of media were incredibly popular, was also a double-edged sword because guess what? All those studios that made those movies and games set back hard because of COVID. So shows were put on a hiatus, movie filming was halted, and games entered straight up development hell. So here comes along Genshin, a new gacha game that broke into the mainstream with its uncanny resemblance to Breath of the Wild, iconic anime art style, and the promise of having near infinite content. And guess what? Genshin was an instant hit. It was insane how popular this game got. And although I didn't stick with the game for too long, I completely understood why other people remained. It was an entirely new world to explore that was really hard to find anywhere else. And that's the thing. It was hard to find a game like that anywhere else. So without any real competition, without anything to compare to, or without any way to see what could be better, a lot of players became complacent. What normally would call for outrage was the norm. People tolerated the shitty and outdated flaws of Genshin Impact because there was nothing better. You skip to 2024, now players have been playing Genshin for 3 to 4 years. Players are now attached and used to the game's mechanics despite the option that offers an upgrade in almost every conceivable way. And instead of welcoming it gladly, it was rejected, put down, ridiculed. It almost kind of sounds like, my god, you guys are turning into my parents. I literally got my mom a whole new phone, yet she uses the rinky-dinky broken taped up Samsung Galaxy S8 because she's used to it. It was seen as a threat to all the years they had spent on the game they had loved, but also just grown to tolerate. That's what we call sunk cost fallacy. A lot of people at this point, despite being discouraged by the lack of desired changes, were sticking along because of all the time and money they spent. So if they quit now, it'd be a waste. It's always been a waste, and that goes for every gacha game, not just Genshin. New players don't have that holding them back. New players get the chance to compare the two games, and guess what? They're going to play the game that feels better to play as people who have zero prior experience. You can say you prefer Genshin's gameplay, but in a pure technological and a game sense, Wuthering Waves does offer more. Hence,
Wuthering Waves to me is me in my best shape.
at the end of the day, this is all about taste. Some people like the slower pace, some people like the more colorful and cartoony style that Genshin has to offer, and some people also prefer focus on story rather than intensive gameplay. And that's perfectly fine, but you have to understand that for the vast majority, the game comes first, and if they aren't hooking the player within those first 30 minutes, it's cooked. You also have to accept you're now becoming the boomer in this genre of gacha games. You're the person that's going,
Back in my day, we needed to climb up the mountain. We don't do that newfangled wall running and flying and horse riding.
the game by a lot of standards is outdated, and people are going to gravitate towards the new and shinier toy. It happened with Genshin and Star Rail. It happened with Genshin and WuWa. And it'll probably happen with WuWa and Silver Palace, or Dual Knight Abyss, or whatever other gacha game is coming out. So while I can understand the frustration of seeing your game not being given the due diligence, you have to also understand that Genshin is slowly becoming a product of its time.